$25 and I'm going to a game store. What do I buy for my D&D game? That's what we're going to be getting into today. Okay, so this is user Forever No 6808, and they said, I'm going to America with my family in a couple days, and I'm going to a game store in Las Vegas named Night and Day Games. I was just in Vegas recently, and I didn't see you there. I have a $25 USD budget, and I do not know what to buy. I love D&D, but I simply do not know what is worth it. I am a DM if that helps. Okay, 25 bucks, 25 schmackaroonies. If I had to choose what I was going to do with 25 bucks, especially in America in Vegas, you're going to be able to get like one thing. You can't afford any of the books because that's just how it's going to be. I think honestly, let's just assume you have very few D&D things or you don't have many D&D things at all. I personally would jump in and buy myself a battle map. So like a dry erase battle map that I can put things on and erase, and then just a set of like minis would be great. I'm gonna assume you have dice already. So, and then yeah, a couple sets of minis. A lot of times you can get the unpainted whiz kits for like $5 a pop. They come with like 2 or 3 minis in them. I used these tiny little unpainted kobold minis for like every creature for the longest time. And then whenever I was feeling a lot less financially responsible, I would buy the mystery boxes for Storm King's Thunder because they were doing that set while I was running Storm King's Thunder. So those are all things you can buy. What I would do though is get like unpainted minis if they have like 3D printed stuff, because a lot of stores will make their own 3D printed stuff now. It's probably gonna run a little cheaper, so that would be nice. And or just little tiny accessories. Let me see if there's anything I would recommend on my shelf. Okay. So what I found was I actually bought these on Amazon, but you probably can find stuff like this in the store. And this thing is just like a little wooden boat, but there's tons of different ones. You can see them all on the shelf over there. There's tons of different little things like this that are pretty inexpensive. As far as 3D printed things, I printed this myself, and it's a little stone arch. So pretty cool. There's a bunch of stuff like that over there too, but we had a 3D printer, and so made one of these. They might sell these at some of the stores. I don't know exactly what this store you have that you're going to has. And then as far as minis, these are those kobolds I was talking about, these little guys. So this one I believe was unpainted before, and one of my buddies painted it, but yeah, this one's super cheap. Other than that, there's actually one other cool thing. I can't talk about these enough. The books of battle maps. These are freaking awesome. If you can get your hands on one of these, this is probably my biggest recommendation, and then would be the other stuff like the minis and everything. If I was to put the products in like order of how I'd buy them, I'd buy the book of battle maps, I'd buy some minis if available, and then these are pretty cheap too. They're these little epic encounter things. I'm not sure how they get reviewed online or anything, if they do, but I actually really like them. They come with like a brief little story that you can run for a one-shot, some minis, and like maps and stuff. Everything you need to run for this story. So this is Tower of the Lich Empress. Everything you need to run Tower of the Lich Empress is in here. I think this is like 25-30 bucks. So if you can get your hands on one of these, this would give you a whole lot of stuff you can use for your game. So battle maps, one of these, and then minis would be all the things I would look at. You have $25 to spend. Up next, I saw this person in a hot takes thread said, they're probably going to get fireballed to hell and back for saying this, but turning all formerly evil races into poor misunderstood victims was the worst thing WotC has done to the game. There's 2 major issues. First, D&D is not a reflection of real life or real societies. It is a game. Heroes need antagonists, and evil, irredeemable races have been a staple in fantasy since the genre's inception. It's hard to stage continent-wide conquering sprees if the instigator are just a small splinter group of orc tribe Snaggletooth for starters, at least without some serious plot gymnastics. Also, the hypocrisy. Evil human empires are okay while evil orc or dark elf nations are not. Here's what I have to say about this person is they're not wrong that there needs to be antagonists and stuff like that, but I also think that I'm gonna make sure I word this right. I love an endearing goblin. Like, I love an endearing goblin being in the party. Same with a fun, charismatic bodybuilder orc. Like, I love those kinds of characters too. And so I do agree, yeah, we should be able to have a freaking group of orcs go out there and tear across the continent. But in the same way that you're a hero, you could be a hero that's a human, and this other kingdom is trying to commit genocide. Like, it's totally okay to have a little bit of that. And if you want in your setting, because realistically, if you're the DM, you can just write in that that's how your world works. I think it's easy as that. Like, hey, I have a Tolkien-esque orcs are bad world, as opposed to a Forgotten Realms-esque orcs are redeemable world. And that's totally fine. So I think this really revolves around write your own world how you want to write it, and don't tell us that, yeah, in the official stuff, maybe there's room for interpretation. I think leaving room for interpretation is a good thing. So that's where I've got to go with that one. Room for interpretation is good. I don't think that we need to pin all orcs under the same umbrella. Moving on. How do you balance campaign prep with player backstories? Hey everyone, I'm a very new DM and I found that I really enjoy creating my own campaigns. My problem is figuring out how to balance prepping the introduction of a new campaign with weaving in my players' backstories. My players are just as new to D&D and TTRPGs as I am, so they're a bit lost when it comes to creating their characters, and I'm still figuring out how much prep I should do. From what I've seen in guides, the idea is to use Session 0 to build characters together so I can tie their backstories into the main story. One important part of Session 0 is presenting the theme of the campaign, since that will influence what kind of characters they want to make. So that's something I need to bring prepared. Then I'll have to write a story that blends both the main plot and the characters' stories. What stresses me out is the uncertainty of what do I actually do before Session 0. I don't want to over prep and then have to throw it all away when I need to change a lot to make the story's beginning feel natural instead of forced. On the other hand, how do you decide on the themes of the adventure? I imagine more experienced DMs show up with specific themes in mind, but right now all I can think of is something like a classic medieval fantasy adventure, kind of like the last Dungeons & Dragons movie. Monsters, villains, and a bit of humor and self-awareness. I'm not sure if that's too vague. My question is, how do you usually coordinate the dance between building the story and working with your players so that it feels cohesive without having to rewrite everything at the last minute? Sorry for the long post. I hope I explained myself clearly. This is user Gary Grinnerd. Okay, Gary Grinnerd. So here's where I would go with your prepping a campaign. You're right, it is very difficult to get yourself a premise, especially if you're just starting out or you're not really sure where to go from the beginning. In the past, I have done this, which is just I've run a module, and then as long as the module went fine, I have followed it up with my own self-inserted lore and stuff. So like I ran Storm King's Thunder, and there's a side thread in Storm King's Thunder where the fire giants are hunting down this huge mech thing called the Vonandad, which could be brought out, could be just referenced and not used again. So the fire giants are doing that while all the other giants are doing other things. And my players managed to stop the Frost Giants plan, the Cloud Giants plan, the Hill Giants plan, and they were friends with the Storm Giants, but they never touched what the Fire Giants were up to, except they saw one time they were mining out a lot of stuff. And so I followed it up with the Fire Giants plan succeeded. They managed to get their hands on the Vonandad, and they started just wreaking havoc. They were marching on Waterdeep with this giant mechanical, like Gundam, that they were about to just mow down Waterdeep with. It was really fun. It was really cool. So if you're brand new to DMing, I think it's totally cool for you to, like, I don't know, run Waterdeep Dragon Heist or Lost Mines of Phandelver, and then go from that into something you would run yourself. And you don't even have to do this based on the actual books, like the Forgotten Realms. If you want your own setting, like you can make up, okay, well, here's my typical medieval town, and Waterdeep Dragon Heist happens there. It's now Snowhaven Dragon Heist. Easy. So these are very solid. I think this is a very solid way for you to get your feet wet in the world of DMing and writing your own story, while also putting forward a little more, or taking a lot of the workload off your back. So outside of that, if you're fully committed to wanting to do this fully homebrewed, then I would say yes, come up with a general premise. Like maybe read over some of the stuff. Maybe if you want an Eberron-esque world or a Dragonlance-esque world, you could sit down and be like, okay, there's a war going on. You are part of a war-torn countryside, and it's going to be Game of Thrones-ish. A lot of political intrigue. Or Eberron-wise, steampunk. Just give them a theme. Get maybe session 1 ready on your end. So do a couple hours of thinking and typing and getting your story ready, and then present that premise to them. So that way they know what they're going for character-wise. Or even just ask them, hey, what kind of characters would you like to play? And then they're going to give you stuff, and you're going to go, oh, now I have an idea. And then everything's going to come from there. There's a lot of different ways you can do this, like going into session 0, but session 0 really is about figuring out, hey, what are we going to do? You don't even have to make characters in session 0. It's mostly just like a conversation about what are we going to do? What are we going to play? This is for us. It's a group thing. What's our plan? So that's really what I got for you there. Campaign prep with player backstories is, if you want to work in your players' backstories, the best way to do it is, I think, involve that in the main campaign thread. So like when I ran Storm King's Thunder, it starts in a town called Nightstone. One of my characters was from Nightstone, and so he comes back to his hometown having been ravaged by goblins. And this is like session 1, that's the premise, so I'm not really spoiling Storm King's Thunder, the entirety of it for you. So yeah, he comes home to his hometown having been ravaged by goblins, and that was a big deal. That came up multiple times in the campaign. So run off of their ideas, because this is about their characters, not about your story. I mean, it can be about your story. Your story is important, but even more importantly, it's important that your players have a good time at the table, not just that you get to tell your story. That's all I got. Last but not least, is this D&D? Hi, so maybe a weird question, but I was wondering, my friends and I have started playing D&D 5e last year, all beginners. I'm their DM and started with some short beginner adventures, but as I love storytelling, was always tweaking things around and am now running a campaign I wrote myself. And here's what I'm wondering. At one point does it stop being D&D, and can I even play D&D at another table? We were never very good at remembering all the rules, so my players opted for characters without a lot of spells, for example. And when we don't know a rule for a scenario and can't find it in the PHP or online in a few minutes, I just decide on something. I also frequently modify the monsters from the MHB. Make up my own potions and weapons because I feel too limited by the options I found in the standard system, so I feel like more and more I use the D&D world as a structure to build my own thing on. But then I realized, what if I want to play with another group, because we do have a pen and paper club in town I wanted to look into. Since I make up quite a few things, I don't know as much about real D&D, and I'm honestly still intimidated by the rules and lore. You think I should learn it and learn it more before I join a table at the club, because it will hinder the group that I know less about the system you might expect from someone who claims to DM? That's a long sentence. How much am I supposed to know at this point, and can I even call my own group a D&D group? Yes, you're playing D&D. I promise you're playing D&D. Just because your players choose, oh, we want lower magic because it's simpler, and because you have taken to homebrewing a lot of your stuff, does not mean that you're not playing D&D. My players do this. We've been playing for, 8-9 years now, and what we end up doing now is almost all of our magic items are, if someone says, hey, I'm going to get an uncommon magic item, like in character creation, a lot of times I'll just choose like a random hey, I'm going to get a ring protection, something like that. But if someone says, hey, you can make a rare item, I'm going to start designing my own rare item because it's fun. Yeah, we homebrew a lot of that stuff. You are not limited to just what's in those books. That is the skeleton for what makes up the game. So, and I think you'll be just fine going to another table or DMing for another group, because a lot of times you can just explain up front, hey, this is kind of how I run things. Are you guys okay with that? And almost all the time, everybody's going to go, yeah, of course we are. You'll also run into some weirdos. There are some weirdos out there that I run into playing D&D. But I've also DM'd at conventions and had such a fun time with just the strangers that I met. There was one time I went to a convention and afterwards I went to dinner with 2 of my players and we just talked, got to know each other for a while. Never ever saw those guys again, but I'm pretty sure they paid for my dinner because I gave the lady my card and I never got charged. So I'm pretty sure they paid for it without me knowing. Yeah, pretty cool though. You're gonna be just fine. There's a lot of rules you've homebrewed. There's a lot of extra magic items and stuff that you've created yourself, and that's part of the fun of the game is you made it up, and it was awesome. Yeah, you're playing a little bit of make-believe. That's okay. You don't have to only have wands of fireballs, rings of protection, cloaks of evasion. You can have your super cool Iron Man mech suit that shoots photon blasts too, if you'd like. Just make sure it's not more powerful than the other guy's stuff. Yeah, so I understand the feeling, hey, I want to get into D&D, but my group is kind of unique, but I think everybody's group is kind of unique. And yes, you might find yourself in a different experience with this new set of people than you do with your current group, but you'll fall into it and it'll be just fine. If you guys enjoyed the video, I'd love to hear a story from you. So comment down below telling me your favorite D&D story or some kind of hot take you have, anything like that, and I want to get back to it. So go ahead and comment that down below and click the notification bell so you can see when I post the video that features your story. I'll see you guys in the next one.